I was born in 1987. That makes me 31 as of this video. As you can hear when I play games, I have kids. Tons of them. For nearly as long as I can remember, I have been playing games. I distinctly remember playing the original Mario Brothers on Atari in our basement in Belvedere, Illinois. I had to have been 3 or 4. For those of you who don't know, the original Mario Brothers is the same game as the Versus Battle from Mario 3 if you have 2 players on the same space, but I digress. Video games have been a part of my life ever since. I remember my brother and I coming home from school to come face to face with Tetris, playing on our TV because Mother had gotten us an NES. I remember renting an SNES before we got one so we could play Mario World. I remember being scared poopless by the emergencies in Sim City. I remember Final Fantasy VII. No, wait a moment, it was Final Fantasy VIII that really got me into turn-based role-playing games. I remember playing Final Fantasy X for 12 hours the day I got it. I remember being blown away by Shadow of the Colossus. I remember tearing up during the final fight of Mother 3. I remember spending far too much goddamn time playing WoW. I remember playing around 100 games for this very YouTube channel. Hell, I even went to school for video game design, even though I've since learned that the industry is really hard to get into. I still dream of games based on my ideas. This is a serious core of my being. Oh yeah, I remember loving to hate Mega Man games. As I have grown up, it has flipped. I feel like I hate loving them instead, but rather because Capcom doesn't seem to know what to do with the series despite having numerous wonderful games. That is, until the last year. They recently released all the classic Mega Man games in Legacy Collections. Legacy Collection 1, released in 2015, has the original NES games, 1 through 6. Legacy Collection 2, released in 2017, has 7 through 10 on it. Also, the Mega Man X games have been released in collections and has all going to be a Mega Man 11. Yes! So in the celebratory spirit, I'm going to torture myself by playing all the classic Mega Man games in the Legacy Collections and review them, because why not? The first Mega Man game was released for the NES in 1987, hence me mentioning that year at the beginning of the video. The game is as old as I am. Anyway, the game established the core gameplay almost every other game in the series has followed. You control Mega Man, a lab assistant robot turned fighting machine. Built by Dr. Light, Mega Man was converted to combat the evil machinations of the nefarious Dr. Wily, a former partner of Dr. Light's. In a bid to take over the world, Wily has corrupted 6 powerful industrial robots to fight for him. Cutman, Gutsman, Bombman, Iceman, Fireman, and Electman. The PSP remake, Mega Man Powered Up, added Time Man and Oil Man. Players control Mega Man, jumping and shooting through themed stages based on each robot master, leading up to a fight with the master themselves. Stages are varied and difficult isn't exactly the good enough word. Frustrating at times, like Gutsman's stage. The game actually does a good job at teaching players how to play, but I'll get to that in a bit. Fighting the Robot Masters has become an iconic part of Mega Man games due to a system based on Janken Pon, which is rock, paper, scissors for us Yankees. Each Robot Master defeated grants Mega Man a special weapon, such as a Scissor Boomerang from Cutman or a Tri-Lightning attack from Electman. Each Master is weak to a specific weapon. Iceman, for example, is weak to the weapon from Fireman. This is the meta of the Mega Man series, figuring out the weaknesses. I did not do that. I researched each weakness because I suck. Keep in mind, using a Master's weakness doesn't always make the Master fight easy, just easier. After fighting through the Robot Masters, players have to navigate increasingly difficult stages in Dr. Wily's fortress, with incredibly difficult bosses at the end of each stage. This has become another series staple. The first game introduces one of the most recurrent boss fights, the Yellow Devil. Everyone who knows this series hates the devil fights, which have varied throughout the series. Eventually players have to refight the Robot Masters, then take on Wily himself. In keeping with megalomaniacal egoist fashion, Wily keeps the biggest, most powerful machines for him to use. but he eventually falls to the mighty buster of Mega Man. The first Mega Man game, it's certainly an NES game, in that it is demonically hard. It's not the only game in the series like this. As I mentioned earlier, some stages are really frustrating. The first parts of Gutsman's stage has these moving platforms that drops players into death pits. Iceman's stage has a very difficult part, at least for me, where you have to navigate jumping between moving platforms that also shoot you. Elecman's stage has a section where you climb ladders while being attacked by enemies, and if you get hit at all, there's a good chance you will fall down at least one full screen before being able to get back on the ladder. Honestly, the damage knockback is one of the series' main sources of death. You are plopped on so many small platforms that getting hit once is often an instant death. Here's the thing. All of these things are lessons. The game actively teaches the player how to play it. Rarely are these obstacles too dangerous when first encountered. Immediately after that, sure, but players who pay attention should be fine to learn the lessons. These skill checks, as I call them, happen during the Wily stages. Almost every frustrating level portions are present in the Wily Fortress, and the lessons learned, often forced over multiple lives, serve well to make sure getting through the fortress is doable. The fortress boss fights, as mentioned earlier, are hard. Thankfully, Mega Man is not a perfectly programmed game. An incredibly famous glitch makes fighting Yellow Devil, one of the most infamous bosses in all of video games, really simple. See, when players pause and bring up the weapon menu, the time when enemies are invulnerable to attack after being hit, known as invincibility frames, resets. This allows for weapons like Elecman's, which are present on screen for multiple frames at a time, to hit enemies several times if the player spams pause. This is the only way I could defeat Yellow Devil. I have tried else how. The same glitch also makes quick work of the final form of Wily's machine, just with a different weapon. To say this game made me angry with how hard it is would be like saying the sun is hot. It is an obvious observation. It established a lot to love about the game. I love the graphics and music. Character design is zany and fun. Controls are tight. Gameplay is easy to learn but hard to master, but man, that difficulty is a bummer. I know it's a product of its time, but this review series is about recommending games now, not 30 years ago. As such, I give this a 2 out of 5. With some patience and persistence, it's a game worth experience at least once. Just get ready to chuck a controller or 23. Released a year after the first game, Mega Man 2 is a landmark game, not just for the series, but for gaming in general. Oddly enough, the first game really didn't sell that well. Capcom, however, let the team who worked on the first game work on the second as sort of a side project. They created a remarkable game. The story takes place a year after Mega Man had initially defeated Wily. Wily has created 8 new evil robot masters: Metal Man, Wood Man, Flash Man, Crash Man, Air Man, Bubble Man, Heat Man, and Quick Man, along with a new massive fortress to stop Mega Man just in case. Of course it doesn't work. Mega Man goes through them all again. In the end, Mega Man beats a dragon, a tank shaped like Gutsman, and even an alien. That's the plot. There's not much that has changed from the first game. Wait, sorry? Mega Man 2 can't be accused of changing the formula too much. What it did, however, was refine what was present previously. There's no more point system. There are 2 more robot masters, at least on the NES version. There are 3 movement items instead of 1. Difficulty isn't quite as harsh, but there's still some hard segments. Weapons are more varied, the music is catchier. Sure, the game may use the same or similar graphics assets from the first game, but as I said, the first game was not well received, and the team was told to work on this one on the side. You can tell this is a passion project instead of a corporate decree. Hell, even the Robot Masters were designed differently. Fans were asked to send in ideas for Robot Masters, and Capcom received over 8,000 submissions. Mega Man 2 took the skill check design from Mega Man, where stage elements were reintroduced in the Wily stages and incorporated them into the stages themselves. Throughout the game, players are introduced to one obstacle in the controlled setting, then the same obstacle and new stakes. For example, the infamous disappearing blocks in Heatman stage. When first seen, players don't have to navigate more than a few in a row without much of a threat of death. Later in the level, there's a long stretch where there are dozens of blocks in a row over instant death obstacles like lava or pits. This skill check design was fleshed out more in later games, but this is where skill checks were used as a means to make a single level feel more cohesive. This makes the Wily stages unique experiences where players have to learn and adapt to new level elements based on how the rest of the game trained them. Okay, so what do I say critically about this game? Much of what I love about video games is in this immaculate example. It's fun, it's challenging, the music is amazing, the stage variety is on point, the ice level has no death traps. I cannot stress how amazing this is. The Wily stages and bosses are legitimately challenging instead of the difficulty cliffs other games in the series tend to present. Actually, more on that one in a bit. There are just so few things this game does wrong. But I will talk about those few things. It's important to be fair. While the Wily bosses are able to be overcome with practice, they're still kind of jarring in difficulty. The first Wily boss, the dragon, makes it easy to be knocked off of small platforms to your death. However, this is something that happens multiple times throughout the game, so it can be actually considered a skill check. The second boss, the Room of Boxes, deals tons of damage on hit, but is 100% a predictable pattern that can be learned with time. So this is totally doable since the second Wily stage is not exactly a marathon. The third fortress boss, however, is legitimately a problem. It requires absolute accuracy and timing with Crash Weapon in order to succeed, and if you don't enter the fight with full weapon energy, you cannot win. This is not a problem that can be ignored. As much as I love this game, it is a huge blemish. Even beyond the save state system in Legacy Collection, I had to use a glitch to beat it. So it's not a perfect game. It's still the best game in the series by far. Some would argue 3 is better, just wait until I get to that. For now, one blemish does not take too much away from the total experience of this game. It is a game well worth your time, money, and effort. Get it. 5 out of 5. Easily. The sequel to Mega Man 2 came out 2 years later, in 1990. The plot of Mega Man 3 shows Dr. Wily has, well, he's reformed. He has started working together with Dr. Light to build a robot for the benefit of all humanity. Gamma. Gamma is not complete though. The 8 robots designed to lead the mining for Gamma's power crystals go berserk, and Mega Man hunts them down. Throughout his journey, Mega Man is attacked by the mysterious Breakman. After defeating the 8 robot masters, Top Man, Hard Man, Magnet Man, Shadow Man, Spark Man, Needle Man, Gemini Man, and Snake Man, Mega Man has to fight robots based on previous robot masters. Upon his arrival at Dr. Light's lab, it is revealed that Wily has stolen Gamma and the power crystals. As twice before, Mega Man goes after Wily to defeat him. Players are then given the realization that Breakman is actually Mega Man's older brother, Proto Man. Mega Man 3 has a similar skill check system to what was present in Mega Man 2. Usually the repeated obstacle and stages are enemies, not stage elements. Players fight a notable enemy in a safe setting, then a more hazardous one, and then maybe an even more hazardous one. Instead of changing the formula in a massive way, Mega Man 3 introduced 2 gameplay mainstays of the series, sliding and rush. Sliding allowed players a way to quickly move in a short spurt and get under small gaps. This made dodging attacks and navigating stages more easily managed. Rush was introduced as a means to replace the items from previous game. Rush can be a jumping coil, a flying jet, or an underwater marine. These also help with navigating the stages. This game leaves me conflicted. On one hand, each stage is designed, or rather decorated, immaculately, and the soundtrack is amazing. On the other hand, I feel like portions of the game were designed to be frustrating instead of challenging. Maybe I just suck, but if my other playthroughs prove anything, it's that I'm willing to accept challenging defeats in order to succeed, except for 2 instances, and you'll see. Throughout the game, I experienced times where upon entering a room, enemies would just immediately be able to attack me without me being able to respond. This is not a challenge. It is cheap. There was one segment of Shockman's stage that took me 19 tries to get through. 18 deaths just to cross a room. This happened because enemies spawn directly above small platforms that quickly shoot up when you land on them. The biggest problem is that during the time frame where the enemy is spawning, they are invulnerable but can still damage you. Platforms are small enough that being hit almost always causes a fall down the pit, so an instant death. Otherwise, the enemy spawns right in front of a jump arc, knocking you out of the air. The only way I was able to do it was blitz through as quickly as possible. Boss fights can also be a bit beyond challenging. Magnet Man in particular is rough because it's hard to predict whether he'll jump or pull you in, and I feel like his hitbox while jumping is inconsistent, since there were times where he could hit me, but I couldn't see contact. While not as cheap as the fireman fight from the first game, this is still frustrating when precision clearly matters. There was also an issue I had with the game not recognizing my controller inputs, especially shooting, sliding, and jumping. Something I did not experience with most other games. I can't really blame the programming of the original game on this, as this may have just been an issue with my controller or an issue with the emulation, but it was still only present here and led to much consternation. This game surely has a legacy to uphold, and unfortunately I feel like the legacy outshines the game itself. Often considered a classic and one of the best Mega Man games of any series, I just don't like it. It's genuinely the most rage-inducing game I've ever played. If it weren't for the visuals and the music, it would get a 1 out of 5 for me. Instead it gets a 2. Presentation is an important factor for video games, and this game is great in that regard. I just can't let go how angering the game is. Keep in mind, I beat this game. There are games in this series I did not beat, and I still consider this game the most frustrating. That's something. Released and taking place 1 year after Mega Man 3, the world seems at peace since Wily's apparent death at the end of the previous fight. However, a new evil scientist, Dr. Cossack, unleashes 8 robots upon the world, looking to rule over it with fear and power. Dive Man, Dust Man, Drill Man, Bright Man, Toad Man, Barrow Man, Skull Man, and Ring Man. Mega Man once again jumps into the fray in order to protect humanity. Mega Man has a new weapon to fight off these bosses this time. Mega Man is able to charge up energy and release it in a more powerful shot, a Mega Buster shot. This has since become an important part of the franchise, only not appearing in games in order to differentiate Mega Man from other playable characters as in 9 and 10. Charging the Buster makes the time between dealing with enemies or dodging boss attacks worth the wait, since successfully dodging damage is rewarded with being able to deal more damage with your next attack. Rush returns as the same forms that he had in the previous game, but Mega Man also has the wire, which allows him to hang from ceilings, and a rising platform balloon to help him out. Once Mega Man gets through the first fortress fights, he goes up against Dr. Cossack. It is revealed that Cossack is being blackmailed by decidedly not dead Dr. Wily, who had kidnapped his daughter. Mega Man frees her, Proto Man takes her away, and Mega Man goes after Wily once again, fighting his way through yet another Wily fortress. Wily escapes after defeat yet again, and life goes on. Mega Man is weird. On one hand, I legitimately enjoyed it more than Mega Man 3. On the other hand, it's an unmemorable game beyond the ability to charge the Mega Buster. Having played through the rest of the games, I can distinctly remember certain stage porches or fun/difficult boss fights from them. Before writing out this review, all I could remember about this one is the charge buster shots not being as tall as in the other games. That's not exactly a good thing, but it's not necessarily a a bad thing. What I mean is, though I enjoyed it, it isn't remarkably angry. Having gone back and watched my playthrough, I recognize a few tough spots, but so far each game has had those moments, so I can't even say these moments make this game memorable. Heck, before rewatching my footage, I can only name 3 of the Robot Masters off the top of my head: Charge Man, Ring Man, and Pharaoh Man. Every other boss I can think of is fuzzy in my mind, so as to make me doubt if they are in 3 or 5 instead. Crap! Charge Man is in the 5th game. See what I mean? But no matter what, I remember it being at least fun. Fun, but not memorable, gets a 3 out of 5. Middle of the road. It did nothing wrong, as far as I can tell. It's definitely worth your time, just don't expect to be blown away. Once again released 1 year after the previous game, Mega Man 5 takes place just a few months after Wily's escaped capture. Mega Man visits Dr. Cossack for a new robotic companion. While there, they get a call from Dr. Light saying that there are new robot masters attacking the city, being led by Proto Man. This shocks Mega Man, since Proto Man had shown himself not to be an evil bot, but rather more neutral than anything. Proto Man captures Dr. Light, and Mega Man once again rushes into the fray. Mega Man hunts down Crystal Man, Gravity Man, Gyro Man, Star Man, Napalm Man, Wave Man, Stone Man, and the star of Mega Man 4 according to my brain, Charge Man. Rushes back, but only in his jet and coil forms. Joining Mega Man, after collecting his various parts, is the bird Beat. Beat attacks Mega Man's enemies every few seconds. This game also introduced energy tanks that refill weapon energy instead of just life energy, as well as an arrow that can be quickly hopped on and used as a moving platform. The Mega Buster takes a much more familiar form in this game. Instead of the smaller attack from F4, the Buster is now the same height as Mega Man himself. This allows it to hit enemies that are normally too short or low to be hit by normal Buster shots. This makes patience an even easier procedure through the game. I really like the stage variety in Mega Man 5. Gravity manipulation is super fun, and it's in 2 non-water stages here, Star and Gravity. It's most apparent in Gravity Man stage, no surprise there. Having portions of the level switch gravity between up and down is really well done, and unlike most Mega Man games, is incorporated into the boss fight. Gyro Man stage has maybe the most well-known skill check in the game, since it was mentioned in Eagle Raptor's sequelitis video about Mega Man X. You cross falling platforms that are attacked by falling spike guys, then you're attacked by falling spike guys while on the falling platforms. It also has robotic chickens that attack you by sending their explosive eggs after you. That's hardcore! Charge Man stage takes place mostly on a moving train, which is pretty cool too. Not thinking about it critically now, it's kinda messed up that Napalm Man stage is in a jungle. Mega Man 5 is another fun entry. It's more memorable than its predecessor, that's for sure. Refining the Mega Buster into what we all know and love now is probably the game's biggest takeaway. The screwing with gravity is cool too, as not many NES games did it. As with the other games, it had its frustrating bits. The vehicle section of Wave Man stage is just not fun. There was really only one not fun Wily boss, the weird bouncing circle thing. Fighting Wily was tough, but doable. I obviously got frustrated a few times, but overall it was not insurmountable. I give this game a 4 out of 5. It was actually one of the most fun games I played out of the classic series. Yeah, the vehicle section was bad, and at least the first segment of the Wily fight just wasn't fun. Overall though, I was pleasantly surprised with how much I enjoyed the game. Released in late 1993, Mega Man 6 is the last game for the series on the NES. It was actually released a month before Mega Man X, the first SNES Mega Man game, in Japan, and 2 months after Mega Man X in America. The game's story involves a robot fighting tournament run by the mysterious Mr. X, who is definitely not Dr. Wily. The 8 robots are members of an international group of peacekeeping robots, and Mega Man is sent to oversee the tournament. When he gets there, Mr. X announces that the 8 robots, Centaur Man, Plant Man, Blizzard Man, Tomahawk Man, Yamato Man, Wind Man, Flame Man, and Night Man, are under his control, and he plans on taking over the world. Once more into the fray, Mega Man fights to save the world from domination. There is one word I would use to describe Mega Man 6, and it would be unexpected. It's often considered the black sheep of the Mega Man games for the NES, and I was honestly not very impressed every time I tried playing it in the past. I think I may appreciate what they did with this game more than every other classic Mega Man series game besides 2, obviously. It's a well-balanced game that tried a few new things, well, namely 2 new things. First, instead of Rush being 2 or 3 weapons that use a refillable power, Rush can become one of 2 different adapters. The Jet adapter is a limited jetpack, and the POW adapter can charge up a powerful short-range punch that can destroy cracked blocks throughout the levels. This ties in directly with the second change-up, branching paths. While I didn't notice it with the first couple of levels I played, it seemed every level, even the endgame levels, had branching paths. Usually these branching paths require one of the 2 Rush adapters to access, but several just need Flame Man weapon. Players are rewarded with shorter paths through levels, and more often than not, extra power-ups and goodies. It's worth noting that branching paths throughout the same screen is a common theme in Mega Man games. This goes beyond that, as the path is genuinely a different way through the level. The element of player choice in Mega Man 6 is honestly refreshing. Each game has the thing that makes it stand out. 1 was brutally hard, 2 had the single best Mega Man weapon of all time of any series, 3 introduced the slide, 4 introduced the Mega Buster, 5 played with gravity and improved the Mega Buster. The ability to choose how to go through a level is definitely the thing for 6. I thoroughly enjoyed my time with Mega Man 6. Only a few times did I feel the game was unfairly designed, and even then it was just a matter of dealing with it. I give it an earned 4 out of 5. What puts it above the 3rd and 4th games is the branching paths. This makes it unique amongst all the classic games, and wow, does that feel odd to say. I cannot say I anticipated, when I first started the series, that I would say of the 6 NES games, the 6th game would be my 3rd favorite, behind 2 and 5. Released in 1995, the first classic Mega Man game for the SNES, and of course released after Mega Man X, Mega Man 7 is the first classic Mega Man game that changes the visual style of the series. Sprites are now bigger and more expressive, allowing for more than the basic expressions of the first 6 games. Music is also more varied and takes advantage of the SNES's better sound chip in good ways. Some enemies have special effects, like the polar bear roars, which is a nice touch. As far as the story goes, after Mega Man 6, Wily is in prison. He is broken up by 4, that's right, 4, not 8 Robot Masters. Mega Man goes through an intro stage, and an addition for Mega Man X, and defeats those 4 Masters. After a quick intermediary stage, the other 4 Robot Masters become available for fight. The 8 Masters are Burst Man, Cloud Man, Freeze Man, and Junk Man first, then Shade Man, Slash Man, Spring Man, and Turbo Man after that. A new rival character in the vein of Proto Man is also introduced, Bass and his robot wolf Treble. Bass's faults several times throughout the game, eventually revealed to be designed by Dr. Wily to be Mega Man but more powerful. He can even combine with Treble just like Mega Man in order to become more dangerous. As I just said, Rush can become the Super Adapter, which is like a combination of the Jet and POW adapters from Mega Man 6. Rush can still be used as a coil and jet, as well as the new power-up hunting search mode. Another addition to the game is a currency system that can be used to buy items such as extra lives, E-tanks, and even a beacon that summons Beat to pull you out of a death pit. Mega Man 7 at first seems like a good introduction to the series for players who've never played an NES game. Stages are well themed and have good difficulty curves. Boss fights reinforce the rock, paper, scissors gameplay of the series by making the combat much easier by exploiting the weaknesses. Characters are well animated and expressive. Gameplay is smooth and responsive. The weapons are fun to use. The worst thing you can label most of this game is basic. It doesn't really have skill checks like previous games did. What I mean by this is the first 6 games had stages designed very deliberately to teach you as you play them. Almost every hazard seen in each of the 46 regular game stages of the NES games is present twice per stage, or something like that. Mega Man 7 mostly lacks that kind of design. While that isn't the worst thing in the world, since stages can be generally unique from beginning to end, players aren't able to learn how to overcome most hazards beyond the first time they experience them. In order to compensate for this, general difficulty seems lowered. That is, until the very last boss. Base makes for the only true layered skill check in the game. The final fight with him is fun since it's him at his strongest, and can be easily beaten if you play the game right. The first stage of the Wily fight is fine, forcing players to navigate difficult but manageable on-screen obstacles. The second stage of this fight is ridiculously unbalanced in the game's favor, and it ruins the carefully ramped difficulty of the game. Keep in mind, I mentioned this earlier, I was infuriated with some of the design choices of Mega Man 3, and some of the final boss fights throughout the first 6 games angered me, but I never quit them. The second stage of the Wily fight here broke me, and I couldn't beat it even with the in-game armor cheat. It's unpredictable, as where Wily spawns is random, along with whatever element his attacks use. It's one of the weird times where it's preferable to just tank a specific attack so that the other attacks do not hit you. It legitimately made me chuck my controller and headset. No damage though, thankfully. I've broken cheap PC controllers before. If Mega Man 3 didn't make me do that but Mega Man 7 did, either the difficulty spike is the size of Mount Everest, or I am actually the worst ever. And the jury is still out on that. I give most of this game a 3 out of 5. It's generally enjoyable game from beginning to almost the end. However, for ditching their apparent design philosophy for an overly frustrating boss, I have to knock this down to a 2. Unfair design is never welcome, even as a means to cosmetically enhance difficulty. It was commonplace in arcades, which were designed to make money by making a single payment's worth of game time as short as possible, meaning that an average player who stuck it out would probably need to pay multiple times. This kind of design theory carried over into NES games, but mostly cleared out by the time the SNES was in full swing. To my knowledge, Mega Man was not an arcade game before being released on the NES, so Capcom usually was very good at making Mega Man games difficult without being unbearable. Mostly. Usually. This difficult mountain of all of a sudden just isn't good game design. It's that simple. Or I suck at the game. Maybe I just spent all this wordage explaining how much I suck. That is possible. Released for the Sony PlayStation and the Sega Saturn, which, surprise, are non-Nintendo consoles, a first for the original Mega Man games, in 1996, Mega Man 8 takes the style change from Mega Man 7 and makes it even better. It's almost like playing a cartoon. There are even anime cutscenes. The game shows off 2 fighting robots in space. They clash and fall to Earth. Mega Man responds to the crash site and fights off some robots with his new toy, an explosive soccer ball. He gets to the crash site of one of the robots, Duo, who is then taken to Dr. Light's stage for repairs after Wily loots something out of the crater. Mega Man then defeats the robot masters that Wily has put in his way, which are again split up into groups of 4. Clown Man, Frost Man, Grenade Man, Tengu Man, Astro Man, Aquaman, Search Man, and Sword Man. There's a fight with Duo in the middle there as he comes to and is confused. Duo then helps out Mega Man get to Wily's fortress, and off to hunting down Wily, Mega Man goes again. Mega Man 8 is exactly a sequel to Mega Man 7. Smooth, colorful animations, catchy but not quite memorable music, fun to use abilities, gentle learning curve with a difficulty ramp up at the end, more on that later. This is seriously the same kind of game as its predecessor. It even uses the same choose from 4 bosses then choose from another 4 bosses level structure. This time, however, I feel like the second set of levels made better use of the weapons from the first set of levels. However, this time I feel like Rush was rarely helpful. Only during the final boss did I ever really use him to any effect, and that was only because I was out of E-takes. Because there's no E-takes in this game. That's really weird. Not having access to Rush Coil this time was odd, but thankfully Tengu Man's weapon does almost the same thing. As far as difficulty goes, as I was playing this game, I kept getting flashbacks to 7. Especially when I got up to the final boss fight with Wily. I was pleased to find out that the final fight with Wily is hard as it should be, but not unfairly difficult. Though the final was similar to the final encounter from 7, down to the teleported Wily on even very similar attacks, players are given much more time to react and deal damage themselves. It is a much more manageable fight, and when overcome, it feels good. To my mind, Mega Man 8 gets a 3 out of 5. Most of the things I remember from the game aren't exactly the best, such as the vehicle segments from Mega Man 5. I honestly cannot think of the segment of the game I was blown away by as far as being enjoyable. Except for the voice acting. Oh my god, the voice acting. The game has some of the best terrible voice acting I've ever heard. Dr. Light is a righteously infamous example, but even the Robot Masters have goofy voice acting. The standouts are Aquaman, who would rather be called Handsome Guy, and Searchman, who just sounds like he wants to do some skateboards like a normal human. As much as great voice acting can elevate a game, horrific voice acting of such a caliber can be just as entertaining. Unfortunately, it doesn't really add that much to the gameplay itself. That is not going to stop me from bumping this game up to a 4 out of 5. 10 years. There were no classic Mega Man games for 10 years. Throughout the time, the various side series like X, Battle Network, and Zero were being released. However, in 2008, at the height of the retro throwback, Capcom released Mega Man 9 for the Wii, PlayStation 3, and Xbox 360. This took the series back to the style of the NES games, almost explicitly Mega Man 2 since you could not slide or charge the Buster. It's not just visual though. 7 and 8 were not exactly the most difficult games, at least in the normal stages. Mega Man 9 brings back the difficulty but incorporates the currency system from the 2 previous games, so getting extra items can help out. For the story, Dr. Light has gone evil and designed 8 evil Robot Masters! But that's what the world thinks. Mega Man knows better, and after Light is arrested, he fights through the 8 bosses: Concrete Man, Hornet Man, Galaxy Man, Jewel Man, Magma Man, Tornado Man, Plug Man, and a first for the series, and only for the series, Splash Woman. Afterwards, it's discovered that Wily has framed Light, and Mega Man vows to defeat Dr. Wily once and for all. It turns out the robots had reached their expiration dates. Wily had them revolt as a means to rebel against being decommissioned. There are some fun extras in the game. The 2 biggest examples are the ability to play as Proto Man after beating the game, and challenges. Proto Man controls like Mega Man, but can charge his shots and has a shield that blocks some attacks, but he takes more damage. The challenges are exactly how they sound. They are short trials that test the player's ability for those who want a little more to the game. This game feels like the equal opposite to Mega Man 7, the yin to its yang, where 7 had the gentle difficulty, 9 has immediate difficulty. Whereas 7 was fun because it catered to the player's sense of joy, 9 was fun because it catered to a desire to overcome a challenge. Why an equal opposite, you may ask? Because both have a similar endgame issue, the unfairly designed boss. 7's endgame problem is worse, that is fully admittable. It had an unfairly designed boss in that its attacks weren't predictable in enough time. 9's unfair boss seems to be a product of randomness rather than harsh design. The first portion of the Wily fight here is based on the knocking explosive eggs back into the mouth of the machine. That's the problem. Sometimes the eggs hit without exploding, Sometimes they hit almost the exact same spot and deal no damage. Sometimes the explosion deals damage, other times it doesn't. This is frustrating for two reasons. 1. It is baffling that a game with such a finely tuned difficulty will let random chance dictate the pace of a fight, and 2. The second phase of the fight is actually semi-controllable by the player's actions. There was exactly zero randomness in the second part of the fight, and given the chance that reliably getting there would make it easy to learn and fight, the fight could be fun. I will accept that maybe I'm just not good enough, but go watch the video of the fight. I get progressively worse as I try the fight. That makes no sense. I know that I take advantage of the save state system in these remakes, but all that does is allow me to try again quicker without having to complete a stage if I lose enough lives. It doesn't make the fight easier. Actually, it should make the fight easier. It should allow me to learn the patterns required to beat the boss. The randomness inherent in the fight disallows pattern learning. See, not all fights in Mega Man follow absolute patterns. Many fights have attacks that happen at random, but once players start to learn, they can react because the unique attacks follow patterns in and of themselves. This does not happen here. Like the Mega Man 7 Wily fight broke me, so too did this one. It's funny to me how after dealing with Mega Man 1 and 3, 7 and 9 were the games to defeat me. I enjoyed the challenge up to that point in this game. It's well made, the music is awesome, the graphics are a perfect callback to the NES games, and so on and so on. I want to give it a 4 out of 5. It is, up to a certain point, one of the best games in the series, but I cannot confirm how good the final boss fight is in its entirety. But a problem occurs here. I favored 2 with not changing its score, despite having some in-game issues. I liked 9 a lot, despite its problem at the end, so a 4 out of 5 it keeps. It may even still be one of my top games in the series, as far as favorability rather than quality. I still prefer 5 and 6 over it. Not wanting to let the iron get cold before striking again, Capcom released Mega Man 10 in 2010. Once again, the game was released for Wii, PS3, and Xbox 360. Shortly after the events of 9, a mysterious virus known as Robo-Inza started infecting robots. Wily was actually researching a cure when an infected robot stole the vaccine machine. He comes to light for assistance, and Mega Man starts hunting down the 8 infected robots who have the machine pieces. Chill Man, Commando Man, Blade Man, Pump Man, Sheep Man, Strike Man, Solar Man, and Nitro Man. During Mega Man's journey, his sister Roll is infected with the disease and given the only cure Wily was able to produce. After defeating all 8 bots, Wily reveals he was behind the virus from the beginning, and any infected robot who wants the cure needs to work for him. Roll, having kept the cure and not taking it, gives it to a newly infected Mega Man so he can save the day. In the end, in a nice twist of irony, Wily comes down with a human flu after being defeated by Mega Man. Having recovered in the hospital, he leaves behind enough of the cure for all the robots after he escapes. Gameplay in Mega Man 10 is, well, it's Mega Man 9 but less difficult. It's so less difficult that the included easy mode puts platforms over death pits and makes other elements easier to get through. Gameplay is still fun and creative, but when the only things I can think of being distinct are some of the mini-bosses, something is wrong. I can't even think of how the Wily fights go without rewatching my footage, and keep in mind, this is the game I played last. It should be fresh in my memory. It isn't. Of course, I remember some of the Robot Masters, as they are the main antagonists, but not really fondly. That's a shame, because I think the game is overall enjoyable, just not as memorable as the game that precedes it. As such, I can't identify any major issues with the game. There was a difficulty spike involved with one of the fortress bosses, but after leaving the game alone for a few days, I returned not already angry from being beaten so many times, and I calmly defeated it. Maybe I should have done this for other fights in the game. Cough 7 and 9! Cough! 3 out of 5. Fun but not memorable. That's the best and worst thing that can be said of Mega Man 10. While I'm glad I played through all the classic series Mega Man games, I would definitely not play through all of them again. Mega Man 2 is still my favorite, but Mega Man 5 and 6 are very good, and 9's good up to a point. The rest of the series stands on its legacy more than anything. Very rarely have games made me so mad so frequently, but being able to overcome these frustrations was always a good feeling when it happened. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this up now. I obviously did not play these games on their original consoles. With the exception of a few of the games, I very specifically could not have gotten through these games without the save load systems present in the Legacy Collection. This feature made my playthroughs easier than it would have been had I been playing the original games. As such, I can't exactly pass fair verdict on these games. As such, of the original 10 games, I recommend 2, 5, 6, and 9 as must-play games. The reason is simple: I had the most fun playing these games. Play them legally however you can. Get the Legacy Collections if you want. I do recommend them. There's plenty of extras, but 4 games stand above the rest. At the time of this review going live, Mega Man X Legacy Collection will have been released. While I plan on eventually playing these games, I am going to hold off. I know X6 is going to make me insane, and I have heard many bad things about X7. I think, instead, I'll move on to the next series. On that note, thanks for watching. I tried working on actually editing this review a bit more, and I hope it shows well. Please, good folks, like, share, subscribe, comment, debate, argue, insult me, make me question my life choices, do all of that fun stuff. If you would be so awesome, please donate to my PayPal down in the description. I am currently desiring a good capture card so I can do console games, and those are not cheap. It's my current desire to do every console Mario game, and if I can get my hands on a GameCube and a Game Boy player, I can also play the Game Boy and Game Boy Color games and GBA games. This would also allow me to play the Zelda and Metroid series. Unfortunately, no DS games, because there's no real good way to record playing those, unfortunately. In the meantime, please check out the Nameless Community Discord. There's plenty of fun, awesome people in there, and I'm not counting myself. Seriously, I'm not that great to talk to. I'm kind of boring. Anyway, see you tomorrow when we find out that war never changes.